And congratulations. Position.
Thanks, Erin.
Yeah, I do want to let everybody know we are going to record this meeting and it will go on the website, just so you know. So if you want to turn your camera off now is a good time. Okay, Celeste.
Hi, everyone. My name is Celeste Lebo, and I work with Oregon State Parks. Probably a lot of you know Sherry Lair, and so I'm the new Sherry on the South Coast.
Thanks, Celeste. Katie.
I'm Katie Butchup. I'm the DC for NLCS for Coos and Coley counties. We currently have a Gorse CIS that's helping farmers and small woodland owners remove gorse on the property. So, Kevin, you said you had a gorse on your old cranberry bogs. I can help you with that.
Awesome.
Right. Al.
Hi, everybody. I am a retired land use lawyer. Back in the day, I did the permitting for Bandon Dunes, but I've also done work in Brookings and Gold Beach and Coos Bay, up and down the South Coast for 25, 35 years. I'm currently a steering committee member on the Wild Rivers Coast Alliance, and my particular focus is on trying to get some affordable housing inside our urban growth boundaries down there, in a situation where the housing that can be built is too expensive, the land that's available and it's not too expensive is either covered by gorse or wetlands or both. So that's my interest.
Perfect, thanks. Miss Liza.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Liza with Windward Gardens, and I'm just here to inform. And if you guys have questions, I'll be happy to fill in. I think I'm on the agenda, so I'll just leave it to that.
Yes, you are. Norma.
Hi, I'm Norma Klein. I'm the OSU Extension Forester for Coos and Curry counties, and I work with small woodland owners, and I get lots of questions about gorse, and I appreciate everyone working on this, and I being involved in this process. I know who to forward folks to for funding and so on.
Perfect, thanks, Norma. Let's see, Ivy.
Ivy with the Coquille Watershed.
All right. Robert.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Robert Franson, rep for the Coos Forest Protective Association, a longtime Bandon resident. Been spending 19 years with the Forest Patrol. All of those spent down in Bandon, up to the last year being the protection supervisor for fire. And then over the last year, I've made the move up to Coos Bay and taking on a different role at the district headquarters as aviation and doing things like that. So I'm kind of stepping away from day-to-day work at the Bandon office, but currently also be the contact for Coos Forest Patrol until they see otherwise.
Perfect. Welcome back, Robert. It's been a minute since we saw you. So thanks for coming. Marie.
Hi, good morning. Marie Simons, Wild Rivers Coastal Land.
Perfect. Ty.
Sorry, this is Ty Downing, WDX Excavation. We're set up for all kinds of mowing of all kinds of vegetation, and we have particularly brutal capabilities with gorse.
Perfect. All right, I got two phone numbers, 4665. 4665. Is that somebody's phone that's maybe not their computer? Okay. Mystery. 6642 347 number.
That's me. That's me. This is Jason Kroll. I'm the vegetation management coordinator for City of Bandon. And gorse is one of the main noxious weeds that we're requiring property owners to remove.
Perfect. Thanks for coming, Jason. And Miss Rhonda.
Good morning, everybody. Rhonda Black, Umpqua Soil and Water Conservation District, and we have a few sites of gorse here in our area.
Perfect. Well, thanks everyone. There's let's see, my math is, we got 20 people on here, so this is great. I'm Erin Vinster. I am the technical coordinator for the Curry Watersheds Partnership. I also serve as the our weed board coordinator down here in Curry County. The Small Water Conservation District is the Curry County Weed Board. So, and I'm currently running the meeting. So we'll get to it here. Real quick, I wanted to just get a little feedback on the accomplishments reporting and remind everyone that that was due on the 20th. I appreciate everyone who has filled it out. If you haven't, you still can. I haven't totally digested everything. So if you did Gorse work in 2021 and you want to report it, please do. If you don't have the link still, I can send that to you. We got some good responses. For those of you that did respond, was the form better this year? Did we like it? Was it easier? Just looking for a little feedback, make sure how everybody felt about that.
This is the first time I've filled it out and it seemed really straightforward and quick, and I appreciated that.
Cool. That's what we were going for.
Darren, are you wanting 2021 or 2022?
2022. Did I say 2021?
Yeah, you said 21. Yeah.
Thanks, yeah, 2022.
Yeah. Moving on.
Yes, moving on.
I had to do a little Googling since I'm new to figure out exactly what counted as the core area versus the outside. I don't know if there's a way to include that map with the form, or I'll know what it is next year, so it won't matter. But that was the only thing I was like, oh shoot, what does that mean? Or where exactly were those boundaries? I guess I knew what I meant, but I didn't know where the boundaries were.
That's good. That's a good.
Yeah, good idea.
I thought I added the map in section 4. Maybe you didn't see it.
Maybe, or maybe it didn't load on my computer or something.
Yeah, that's interesting because Alexa, can you let me share my screen?
Actually, that's going to be an Anders thing because my computer was not cooperating this morning. So,
oh, okay.
Anders, would you allow Erin to share her screen?
I am working on it. I'm not totally Zoom oriented.
Yeah, go down to the bottom.
All right. Share screen.
Yeah, and there's a thing to let participants share.
Okay, can you share now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Anders.
All right, can you guys see that?
There you go.
So yeah, this is where it should have been in section 4. Yeah, so you didn't see that?
I don't think I saw those maps in my Google form for whatever reason. And
Okay,
so I
yeah.
found them on the DAG website, but I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. So you did find them. So that's good. That's also good feedback that you could find them through Google.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was in there. So yeah, I'll have to figure that
Okay,
out.
might have just been me.
Yeah,
she
it
has
could
a
be.
lot of federal security on her stuff too, so that big file might be something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was
Never
going to
know.
ask. Did you do it on your work computer?
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
probably what it probably got blocked. So okay, thank you. I appreciate that information. I can send that out like separate next time, just knowing that it's not. I was all really feeling like sophisticated.
It looks great here.
Okay, cool. Yeah, perfect. Okay.
Erin and Alexa, in the future, Jason will be doing the city abandoned stuff. We were kind of straddling his position, but he will be doing updates for city abandoned in the future.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. We've talked, and we're going to talk
Okay.
about that a little bit later on the agenda. So.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Anything else about the accomplishments? We got 8 responses. I appreciate everyone who responded. I need to reach out to ODOT and see if I can get some information from them. They're the only player that probably did do work that hasn't responded, but you know, they've got roads falling down, so I can understand why that didn't happen. Okay. That's great. Did Carrie Perosco show up today? No, I don't see her. Okay, she was on the agenda to share her demo results.
Aaron, we did just have another phone number call.
Oh, and that is Carrie Perosco's phone number. Carrie, did you hear us talking about you?
Hi, Aaron. I had a really hard time getting in, so I decided to call. If you would just move on to the next agenda item, because my computer crashed as well, I will pull up the demo results, so I'll have them in front of me so I can go over them. But if you choose the next agenda item, I will go after that.
Yes, ma'am, we can do that. We can skip ahead. We'll come back to you. Okay. So City of Bandon update. Jason, you want to let us know the status down there? Up there?
I would say the main status thing for me is that I am still just getting established as a part-time paid position, and it's official, and I'm just getting set up in the office and with communications and whatnot. So, and aside from that, I just submitted the State Fire Marshal grant for essentially funding the other half of the position for the next 3 years. Aside from that, on actual Gorse reporting, I haven't even had a chance to yet. So Liza had specific projects that she wanted to talk about in Bandon.
Okay. Well, thanks and congratulations, Jason. It'll be good to have you there, manning the show. And so you guys are moving into District 3, is that correct? Here coming up?
Yes, I will be sending out the introductory letter to property owners in District 3, which is on Beach Loop on the Bluffs, and we'll take it from there.
Perfect.
I expect to start being able to mapping and cataloging properties better moving forward. So that's the main thing that's going to change for us in the city. Having better monitoring.
That would be great. Yeah, having some idea of what's happening would be, some metrics would be really nice. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Well, good on you and good work. And
Aaron, can I pipe up a couple of things here on Jason? First of all, he's downplaying the amount of work that he's done for free for the last 4.5 months. So let's just get that in there, shall we?
Sure.
And he is pairing up with Bear right now to make that transition smooth. One of the things that is important, and it's not online yet, is Bear was using a private cell phone and emails a lot in the communication about Gorse. And we need to transition away from that. We are making court cases at this point for enforcement on District 1 and 2. And so part of what Jason has to do is get phone and email set up so that, for one thing, it documents the work that he's doing as a contractor for the city, but also that we're making legal representation of the contacts that he made with people and the amount of time he spent trying to get work done, et cetera, et cetera. So if everybody would, we're going to try to transition over the next couple of weeks to where he's just getting email and phone calls through the new number that he'll have, which will get out to everybody, and the vegetation management coordinator email, which wasn't even being checked really prior to this. So that's all a big piece of this thing and couldn't really happen until he was under contract. We also put up a Gorse demonstration, a Gorse information wall. Jason and I did while he was working for free. And that was a small grant from WRCA, which we had some extra money left over, $550 left over. We were under budget and on time, which we're happy about. And so we're maybe going to try to use that money to help with the Gorse demo, which Carrie's going to talk about, the Gorse demo plot, so we can kind of put that into some sort of written format for people. And that's kind of where that money, the other 550 is going to go. But we got all of the brochures that were existing from Samara Group up on the wall as handouts, and hopefully the City of Bandon will be able to do some reprints. We have to figure out how to get those masters to whoever's going to restock that. We also have business cards and the contractor list in there, so people can see that. And there's the major big map that shows all 7 districts, but there's also a district map that shows what's hot right now, which would be District 3. And those people have gotten an initial letter on the old format, but the big thing that Jason has, it's bringing to the table, is the GIS mapping, which is a huge move on the city's part to assimilate the county assessors stuff that John Sweet's people are doing with the city of Bandon stuff. So they're working in real time with real mapping and real numbers that they're not pulling off on a paper format, which is what they were doing before. So we will be in a whole new league when this gets up and running. It's going to take Jason's skill set to do that, though. And the city itself doesn't have it, so they're putting it online in the next couple of weeks here, and then they've got to figure out how it works and all that. So we are in limbo, but we have made a lot of progress. And just this week, we sprayed some follow-up stuff on District 1, and also in voluntary compliance with a nod for more enforcement. We just sprayed a 5-acre parcel, which will include another 3-acre mowing. And that was for out in the Ocean Terrace area, which backs up on Johnson Creek, which will interest the Coquille watershed people because they did everything in the bottom of the creek. But now we're working on the banks, which was the lost cause because of ownership issues. And we've got that worked out between the city manager and the property owner and actually multiple property owners as another collaboration to get that done. So that should make Johnson Creek, South Bank North Bank be cleared of like 100% monoculture. Hopefully, if we can get equipment on there, and we're working right over the creek. So it's a little bit of a tricky one. So anyway, that's some of what's been going on there. We did have a small active slide on one of the properties that we did in District 1, which has been repaired. It's kind of not great news, but it didn't have anything to do with Gorse. It's just the optics of it. I'm sure if you look up from the jetty, you would see it. And it's actually an active area. The city of Bandon right away dumps onto across their street right away, across port property, below a private property owner. This is where those collaborations matter. And took away the embankment, which is literally a right of way, but it impacts the home that's above it. And it's really a drainage issue. That's why it slid. It has nothing to do with Gorse, but everybody will see it as a Gorse slide. So that's what happens when you dump water over the bank, just saying. It did have perennial ryegrass hay on there, and it was a low slope failure. There's willows below, and it'll stabilize, but it's been that whole hill, that house is on the Rittenauer home, which is the old Cronenberg family home. Has been sliding, for years, but this is a new one, and it's right after the Gorse work was done. So I just thought I'd let everybody know about it, just in case it comes up.
And it's going to come up. It's again and again.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, and also Jason and I met with State Parks, and Celeste and Nick were there, and so that was awesome. We had a big conversation and some follow up on that. And so that's another good collaboration starting, because they've got all those parks in the city limits and they are in District 3. So they're going to be one of those people that are going to be under that magnifying glass going forward, and they have some pretty rude Gorse situation there with some pretty unstable slopes and rocky, embankments and all kinds of things to deal with. So we just talked about how to strategize the optics on that and do it successfully and plan for slides. It's going to happen.
Yeah, it was great to hear Liza's experience and all the work she's done and meet Jason. And so, yeah, it was a really great day. Thanks again for meeting us.
We're just glad you're there. Anyway, that's all I have on that.
We've been talking about Bandon districts for years, and to see all the progress and the coordination and the commitment from the city of Bandon, I mean, it's very encouraging, and knowing that there's good work getting done. So, hats off and kudos to all the people who are doing that. That's really important. And, I've just put out there, not sure how WRCA can be helpful there, but, we want to continually be supportive of that work. So let us know.
Thank you.
We are actually ahead on acreage of where we should be for the number of districts that we've done with the voluntary compliance. So there's actually more people mowing on their own We are probably, I would say, maybe 15% ahead on acreage of where we ought to be right now.
That's all very awesome. I
Yeah.
just woot for you guys. I find it to be terribly encouraging and inspiring as well, because I think it really shows, particularly Liza, what you just said about the voluntary mowing, that when others see others doing things, then all of a sudden it matters. And so I think that's such an invaluable thing that never gets caught in any sort of metric or anything like that. But it's one of the more powerful things that happens. So kudos to all the doers here today. Anything else City Bandon worthy while we're on the subject?
Well, Carrie might talk about this a little bit, but I opened a can of worms at ODA. And we're trying to figure out, we realized that the categories that apply to the various chemical applicators, the commercial operators and applicators, don't fit what we're doing in the city of Bandon. And I decided that if we got into a court case or were litigated at the city of Bandon level and we didn't have the blessing of ODA, that we may get into serious trouble, and our applicators could ultimately be the ones at fault for that, because there is no category that covers what we're doing. So I opened that can of worms. Carrie and I strategized on it. She can maybe fill you in a little bit more, but we're hoping to have a meeting with their enforcement people. And I'm going to propose not another category or all the categories, which is what they're leaning, what they're saying. You basically need every category to work in all these different bizarre areas that we have in the city of Bandon. I'm going to suggest that they allow for an endorsement, which is a comprehensive 2-hour class that would go on any applicator working in the city of Bandon or the urban growth boundary. That is a training specific to what ODA sees as critical in these semi-rural, semi-urban, aquatic, ornamentals and turf right-of-way categories that they wanted to distill and get in there, and see if we can get some kind of an endorsement that protects the city of Bandon, showing that our contractor list has been fully vetted and trained and is working in appropriate categories, versus them being out in the wind if they just have a right-of-way category or just have ornamentals and turf. So it's a bit of a can of worms, and it might take a while to sort out, but I want to make sure that our applicators and also the litigation of the city of Bandon is on the up and up, and we have strong defenses when it gets into a lot of spraying over 20 years.
Would that be an annual endorsement?
No, I think they just have to take it once, but we probably would update it in the class program, periodically. And the city of Bandon could offer it as a webinar or whatever. But basically, it would be like having a business license in the city of Bandon.
Yep.
Right? That's kind of what I'm thinking, something like that. Feedback is great if anybody has any ideas.
Well, this is Al. I had a question. Are you running into any issues with fill and removal, moving back from the bluff? There are areas back there that have, that could be wetlands, that might not be wetlands. So I don't know how the EQ looks at going into those areas and cutting and planting and doing that kind of thing. Does that come up at all?
Yeah, it does. And Aaron can also speak to this, but in general, the blessing we've had from Division of State Lands and previous experience with wetland is they don't mind us grinding in the wetlands. And specifically, if you're working where water was present, you'd need an aquatics license. So that might be, it's definitely somebody who is working in water would definitely maybe need to have more, or if it, drained into a stream or whatever, it would definitely bring on another category for sure. But the generic guy that's going by a wet spot isn't going to need that. But a delineated wetland may be that may be. Aaron, do you have some feedback on that? They don't mind grinding though. They don't want pulling though. No pulling.
Yeah. And if I'm correct, and someone else can correct me if I'm wrong, but with the aquatics license, that's specifically for spraying in the water, and I believe the threshold is within 3 feet of the water surface, so standing water. This is where ODOT has trouble with this. Their environmental group does not recognize aquatic licenses. So they don't they don't spray within 3 feet of any, running water that's present at the time of spray. So it's really about whether the water is present then. So, but yeah, otherwise killing noxious weeds in a wetland, I've never run into an issue with that.
I was thinking more about the process of, cutting and removing brushy material and that kind of thing, where you get stuff that is, as I think Lisa said, pulling is a physical activity. More of that than the chemical is what I'm curious about.
They don't want you to pull it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd say you could certainly find yourself maybe in a pickle if you get egregious. You're going in there to get some gorse and you take out all the willows because somebody doesn't like willows or something like that. I think that's where you'd start to run into some, real issues. But yeah, the pooling is a no-go. But yeah, hasn't come up a whole lot.
Good.
Yep. Anybody else? No. So real quick, I just want to share my screen again because I just want to show the pictures of the kiosk that they did that Liza and Jason did at the city of Bandon. So it's really great. You guys see my picture?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's one. And here's another close-up of the pictures of kind of their statement of where they're at. So I think that's really great and really helpful for folks. So nice work once again.
Thanks, Liza.
You're welcome.
And then just a real general question. This is for Liza and Paula and Marie and anybody else. Have we ordered more stickers and magnets recently? No, okay, because I know Paula, you were looking for it. Alexa, I know we still have some left over from Cranberry Festival. Are we still have a lot?
Bunch, yeah.
We do. Okay.
Count when I'm in the office next, but I have like a whole bin just for those things because they wouldn't fit with other things. So
Okay.
we definitely have quite a few. Yeah.
People really like them. I've been passing them out a lot more again lately, and I've seen a few vehicles driving around that I don't recognize with them on it. So it's really great.
It'd be great if Jason could hand those out when he makes these visits or stick them in the letters when he sends them out. They really easily to mail. So if we could get some of those, if there's tons of them, Alexa, that would be wonderful. Because what you see on that wall in the business card thing is all that we have. So, and I can pick those up in Coos Bay if you need me to.
Okay, I'll get a count and we'll go from there.
Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. And nice work, Bandon people. Okay. Carrie, how you doing down there?
I'm ready. I did have a question. You, Liza and Jason, you mentioned you are going through with the next phase of enforcement. I'm just curious, how many cases are you guys working on that front?
Well, I could tell you how many parcels. It's about 450, I think, or 500. But specific Gorse cases, self-reported, so it wouldn't be accurate anyway.
You're talking about how many people are in District 3? Is that what you're talking about, Jason?
Yeah.
She's talking about enforcement in terms of non-compliance.
Oh, like court cases?
Yeah.
Yes.
I would have to ask our compliance officer.
I can answer a little bit of that. I actually, the property owner that we just sprayed that had a 5-acre flat and 3-acre slope, that was it had liens against it. And the city manager met with the property owner and myself in a Zoom meeting, and he agreed to lift the entire like 100 grand of liens from that if we got it going on. And so we did. I jumped right in the middle of it and we got it done.
Nice.
Yeah, so I think that is the approach in general. I mean, there's a few people and there's some we can't do anything about, like the Coast Guard. They are non-compliant in District 1, and we cannot get them to answer, come back at us, help out, do anything. I don't know if anybody's got any leverage. John's Suite, maybe somebody. We have giant problem with that, and we're not getting any help there. But we have 1 or 2 property owners that could go into enforcement. What we have is a really great enforcement officer, and he has such a great, gentle touch that most people feel bad about disappointing him, and they come around. And so we have actually had a court case. So we now have a precedent. We actually did have a court case, and then we relieved them of the judgment because they did the work. And so they quickly realized that it's cheaper to do the work than it is to fine at $750 a day. So we do have precedent now, but I'm not sure exactly how many of those. We're trying to have as little as possible become an actual enforcement, but a couple of those under our belt would be really helpful to scare the bejesus out of other people. But like I said, there were some liens that were levied actually on a major property owner, and they were forgiven when action was taken. So unfortunately, that's not a good revenue stream right now, but it may be down the road as we aggregate more districts. And I think we're now enforcing in District 1 as though they are non-compliant. And so it'll be another year or 18 months till District 2 is considered non-compliant, and so forth and so on down the road.
Well, that's great news. I love hearing that update. That's really encouraging. Yeah, and wow, that's just a lot of work going on. And I will clarify the question that Liza had asked in terms of as District 3 is unfolded and more contractors will be spraying more ground for gorse, of course, is the hope. That Liza had touched base with the pesticides program within my agency, Oregon Department of Agriculture. I work in the noxious weed side. The pesticides group is an entirely different animal. So that, again, the intent is to get out in front of any potential enforcement down the road, that the categories and the license type that our contractors, our commercial applicators are using, that they are adequate for the work that's being done and where it's being done. And it's a little bit of a Pandora's box because there isn't the perfect category right now for these commercial applicators that would apply to every single site in District 3, 2, and 1. And so we're just initiating some dialogue with the pesticides groups. We're going to host someone from the enforcement side. He's actually down in Southwest Oregon. He's the enforcement investigator, inspector. He's out of the Rogue Valley. So he and I are going to come on over here in February and just really talk about what's going on, a little show and tell to unfold the complexities of what Liza has been trying over the phone to describe to our Salem-based pesticides licensing folks. So our pesticides program has 2 arms, if you will. It's an enforcement arm and a licensing arm. And best case scenario with our show and tell, we will have someone from both arms or both sides of the pesticides program equation so that we can dialogue. In terms of Liza's idea, very practical, makes a lot of sense, this endorsement, education outreach. I don't know if pesticides program will sign off on that, but it's a great idea. They up in Salem tend to see things as black and white and look at statute and rule. And so we would reach the sweet spot if we have a great dialogue and they can see some shades of gray between the black and the white in the statute and rule. And so, anyway, we're going to start that dialogue. And hopefully it'll be positive and we'll get some common sense guidance in terms of how our contractors are licensed to do the ordinance work in Bandon. So anyway, so we will keep the group updated as that moves on. Yeah, so thank you, Liza, for initiating that, and hopefully our show and tell will go really
Hopefully
well.
not thank you, Liza, but I had to do it because we're in litigation land out there in District 3. And if somebody litigated against the city or whatever, I really felt like
Yeah.
the applicators could get caught in the middle of that, and it's not fair to them to not
Yeah,
have that
yeah.
clarified.
Yeah, and we definitely have some history with some partners at the table here at the Gorse Action Group. I won't name them, but they got caught in the middle of some of this confusion and just internal issues within our pesticides group. So again, we'll keep you updated as that moves forward. But I was going to present next. I think Erin wanted me to present on a summary from all of our activity out in Bandon over a 2-year period. We put out a demonstration control area, and Frank with OSU Extension, Burris, and myself, Liza, and then Sherry Lair, Wild Rivers Coast Alliance, so that have been Jim and Marie, as well as a private landowner, the Gwinnett family, collaborated a number of years ago in really this big idea of if we could just show people here on the South Coast all of your various treatment options for gorse, ones that we already know are probably not going to work, ones that we know that we're currently using and are working, and maybe some in between that we're not sure if this one would work. So we put out, I think it was 20 plus plots once you divided some of our main 8 plots into subplots. And we tracked them over 2+ years. It was really 2.5 years that Frank and I would go and in the fall and the spring take gobs of data. And Frank was the keeper of the data, and he retired last year. And so quickly scrambled before he retired to sit down with him and get all the data from him, make sure that was in more than his hands. And we started taking a look and analyzing the data of what did these plots show us. And so it's a little bit delayed. COVID, of course, got in the way, and then Frank retiring got in the way of summarizing of all that we found in our demonstration trial. So over the winter, I've been going down that rabbit hole of diving into all this great data and came out with a 2-page, is it 2-page? Yeah, 2-page handout. Erin, could you pull that up? I was going to screen share with you, but my Zoom, I cannot get into the Zoom meeting for some reason this morning.
Yeah, just give me 1 sec. I'll get it up on the screen share.
Yeah, so I split it up into, the title of it is Takeaway Lessons, What Worked, What Didn't, and a Few Surprises. And I categorized the bullet points, the lessons, into several areas. The first is take-home messages, lessons learned, successes, and then surprise successes, some of our non-chemical follow-up methods. And then lastly, our last bullet point section on the handout is failures. Not sure if you have that up yet, Erin. I'll just keep talking until I hear that it's up on the screen.
It's up.
It should be up now.
So, okay.
Does everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay. Go ahead, Karen.
All right. So we'll just focus on the first section, the take-home messages. This is an attempt right at the front of the handout, if anyone was going to be reading this, looking at it on our website, was to just really hit home the integrated pest management, the IPM method that we know works. And it's a 2-step. It's starting with mechanical, big equipment, and then follow up with herbicide. So the first bullet point on take-home messages is combining mechanical and herbicide methods provides the most effective gorse control. And so that's that first bullet point. I wanted to include the second bullet point specifically about the triclopyr herbicides, kind of some really just upfront of how those can be misused or properly used around water and other conditions like wind and temperature. The third bullet under take-home messages is just, regardless of your methodology, plan on retreating crown regrowth and seedlings. Gorse, as we know, is very tenacious. So that is just the real take-home message from this trial. Liza coordinated multiple different types of big equipment into the plots, and we have a handout that the Samara group helped the Gorse Action Group on at the beginning of the trial, and I reference it here. It's on our website, but there's this great handout that gets into what each plot, which equipment was used and which herbicides were used or not used. It really gives all the details of what treatment methods, what combined treatments methods were used in each of the plots. So we already have that to go along with this 2-page handout. If anyone wanted to get into the details, well, what was in that plot? You know, what methods were you combining? So we do have that handout already. We also have, as part of that handout, a nice chart that looks at the triclopyr products. And it's a nice little chart that would help guide someone based on their site, which product would be the best in terms of the triclopyr product. So again, we already have some great handouts, beautiful, really user-friendly, I would say, pretty handouts that are really easily digestible from the public that at the front end of this project. And then this will go be the summary at the end of the project. The next section was lessons learned. We learned a lot. Some of what we already knew and we wanted to confirm, to be honest. But then we had some surprises too. One, the first bullet point under lessons learned, that year one is critical. And we all know that as applicators, as practitioners in this, and any weeds we work on, but especially the trees and the shrubs, the perennials that we work on, that you can't miss year one with follow-up. Once you get the big equipment in, you can't just let it go. So that bullet addresses that real need to really give it the 1-2 punch in year one with your integrated methods. And don't forget the follow-up. Let's see. We also looked in the trial, is there any benefit to doing that follow-up retreatment of any resprouts from the crowns or seedlings both spring and fall, or can you just get away with doing it once per year? And our trial, again, this is not, this is a look-see or a demonstration plot to differentiate from work that is done, that statistically analyzed, published in peer-reviewed journals. Those types of sites are not demonstrations. Those ones actually have replicated plots that you have at least a minimum of 3 plots that you can do statistics on, and ideally more than 3. So this is not that. This is that true demonstration. Take a look, show the public firsthand through this just kind of rough plots. So just want to clarify that. But our trial showed that once per year follow-up is sufficient. That first year, you want to get in 6 months, not miss that 6-month window in terms of retreatment, but you don't have to, I guess, waste your time and money and additional chemical on a site. We found really no difference between plots that had spring and fall retreatment or just spring or just fall retreatment. So that was good information, at least, in this demonstration area was shown. We also had a big question, third bullet point under lessons learned. I have talked to many folks, what surfactant do you add to your mix? And everyone swears by one or the other. Everyone has their favorite. We have our MSO, our methylated seed oil group, and we have our Siltac, that silicone-based surfactant group. And so we put a plot in there, several plots, looking at this. Well, does it matter? Do you get different results if you add one surfactant versus the other? And our demonstration plot showed that there was really no difference between using MSO or Siltac. The most important thing is don't forget to add a surfactant, because Gorse needs all the help to get that herbicide into the stems, to get it into the plant. All right, how's everyone doing? Am I doing okay? I can't see anything, so that's hard. The fourth bullet point under that had to do with, we had some plots, plot 6 and 7, where we had not just one herbicide, we had tank mixes. So there are some contractors and some practitioners that add quite a bit to their tank. They don't just add triclopyr and a surfactant, they add other chemicals like heavy duty Garlon XRT, that's kind of the forest industry's 84% active ingredient of triclopyr. It's a real strong one. Others that also add Escort, XP, that's metsulfuron methyl. Others that add diuron. Others, they add multiple surfactants, including kinetic, Siltec, and MSO. Like they really just add everything but the kitchen sink. And then other ones just add 2. Maybe they'll have triclopyr and then they'll add Escort. So we really wanted to look, is it worth the money? Is it worth putting more chemical out? Do you get better control with more chemicals in the tank? And this demonstration trial didn't show a clear benefit of adding more chemicals. It was, if you just had one triclopyr product and one surfactant, the MSO or the Siltec, that had its great results at the end in terms of dead gorse and looking at ratios of bare ground to other vegetation in the plots. There was really no difference between those. So that's really good to know, because if you're adding tons of chemical, you're wasting money and you're putting more chemical out than you possibly need. Now, the caveat to that, we do have some professional applicators and contractors where their client wants bare ground. That is their goal. They want bare ground, maybe along railroads or a certain right of way. So again, some of these contractors add all these things because their client really desires, like along a railroad, you want bare ground for safety reasons, right of ways for safety reasons. So again, there is a place for it, but in terms of our audience as the Gorse Action Group is typically the landowner, homeowner. We wanted to address that at that level. And the biggest lesson learned is the last bullet point, which is I just can't emphasize enough. The value of looking at this over 2 years, is actually 2.5 years by the end of it, was you can't declare victory soon enough. And I hear this from contractors all the time. I find myself doing it, of looking at something and go, oh, that failed within weeks or within months. Like, oh my gosh, that's not going to work. That's not working. But really what this trial demonstration did show is you need to really track that area that you treated over an extended period of time. And the biggest difference was some of our plots, for instance, crossbow combined with glyphosate, which we hear a lot of landowners using and saying it's the bee's knees, it's all you should use, that just is dynamite. But when we looked at that plot over time, it looked great in the beginning, but by the end of 2 years, it had so much bare ground that it was susceptible to tons of reinvasion by gorse. It looked fantastic in the first quarter, the first season, but by the end of the plot, it was not the clear winner that people think it is. That's one example of you really need to track something over time. The other example was some of our non-chemical methods, like the black, we put down landscape fabric, black fabric, we put down clear plastic as well. And again, time, that took time to evaluate to see if it was going to work or not. Anyway, so that is just like a lesson learned. And I see it all the time of someone, a landowner, a contractor will say, hey, that worked really well and that didn't. And again, they just made an evaluation too soon. At minimum, you shouldn't declare victory or failure until a year out. And the benefit of this trial is we looked 2 years out. So it really was a little bit longer than what we would typically recommend. The other one I should mention with that is we had a new triclopyr product come on, Vastland. And we were getting reports, it's not working. And what we found and what we confirmed in this trial, at least this demonstration level, is that it's just a much slower acting product than the triclopyr 3A or 4. So Vastland, this newer formulated triclopyr product, it worked just as well as Garlon 3A and Garlon 4, but it took longer. It took another 6-8 months, a year, to really show the same results as the plots with just the triclopyr 3 and 4. Any questions so far? The next category is successes. We kind of already knew this, and again, we wanted to make sure that we were advising people from the Gorse Action Group level of things correctly, that using a triclopyr product, so that Vaslan Garlan 3A was our old standard, Vaslan was a newer formulated product, that those all worked in combination with first step one was using the big equipment, doing mechanical removal of those old stands of gorse. Also in the success category, it really took a moment in that to qualify what we were saying by success. It's not just dead gorse, it's also what else happens on the ground you treated. And I mentioned it just a bit ago. How much bare ground is left on a plot matters, and how much other vegetation fills in, desirable vegetation. It could be native or it could just be not invasive, other vegetation. That matters. As we all know, competition is king. Shade helps, any competition you can get in there to avoid reinvasion. So those were parameters and data that we took, Frank and I took each 6 months when we looked at this as evaluating success. It wasn't just dead gorse, number of crowns and seedling resprouts, but it was also bare ground and how much other competition was filling in the plots. All right, any questions so far?
Carrie,
the next category was, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so with with the bare ground and all that, were you going to talk about the tillage a little bit more?
Yeah, that'll be in the surprise successors.
Okay, so we're not there
next
yet.
topic.
Never mind. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead of you.
Yeah, and if I don't address it, ask after I present this next bullet point.
I do appreciate all the top bits, though. I think those lessons learned are pretty fantastic, and I really appreciate the comment about the crossbow glyphosate failure.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah,
Al.
that'll
I
be
had
in
a
the failure.
question. I had a question about the length of the test and the need to revisit. I visited a research site called Tall Timbers outside of Tallahassee a few years back, where they're dealing with fire regimes and loblolly pines, and they've got test plots there that they've had going for 60 years. You're up to 2.5 years now. I'm kind of wondering, are these test plots still in a condition where if you had the funding, you could extend it to 5 or 7 years, or are they already kind of retired?
They are retired. It was kind of a deal Liza brokered for us with the Gwinnett family, was to, at the end of this 2.5 year period, was to, some of the plots looked really, really bad, obviously, like nothing had been done, to make it look presentable. So Liza arranged for the plots that were in terrible shape to get mowed over, treated again to make it look nicer. And so no, the intent was the short term, the 2 to 3 year term. It was
Do you need do you need a long-term site?
Well, Oregon has had long-term sites with gorse in terms of the timber industry. There was this long-range study. I think it's on our website. It was put out by OSU, and it was a 20-30 year study they did with gorse, looking primarily at shade. Like when you go and log and then you replant, how many years does it take to shade out gorse? That was the longest term study I've ever read done in Oregon. And it was, I believe it was 60s, 70s, maybe it started in the 50s. Does anyone remember the details of that one? That's the only truly long-term study I've seen on gorse in Oregon.
You don't see a need to create something like that for the kind of place that you had somewhere else on the coast going forward?
I mean, if OSU had a graduate student that wanted to get a master's or a PhD, I mean, it could be over a long-term period. It could be lots of masters and lots of PhDs at different aspects of a long-term study like that. That would be fantastic. So I
Okay.
I would never say no, but we would have to cultivate someone at OSU that would be interested in that type of long-term study and that would, again, seek graduate students that would participate in
Right.
that over the long term, which would be
But there would be
fantastic.
value. There would be value in that. Okay, that's all I would need to know. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there would be value. What do you guys think, Liza?
Well, Carrie, I think one of the things that is happening now that we've taken up the signs and let everything go back, and you can still see the different plot kind of lines just because of the way that the gorse is coming back. But we're actually continuing the study in a way because this year of fallow where we haven't done anything is showing us some of the resprout and, you know, some of the other issues that if you take your eye off the ball in year 3, you can go backwards at this rate that we're going backwards there now because the property owner is not retreating. So we're actually, you know, in a way, we're watching it go back. She is only managing, Gwynnips are only managing plot 1, and they're using animal husbandry on plot 1. And on plot 8, we have the biocontrol release from the Oregon State and the OSU study there. So we do have 2 plots actually at either end of this that are going on with technically with the activity. And the ones in the middle are now fallow, and there's just, you know, steady comeback happening, but we can kind of see how fast it's going to happen and what the growth rates are. But again, I think it would be better if we have plenty of acreage and plenty of city right away. It'd be better, I think, not to be on a private property owner's good, you know, her good graces. There's liability and, you know, everything else. And that land eventually could, she has a huge monoculture of gorse. That land is just a tiny little piece of what her problem is there. But I think it's not fair. It's not fair to test there because it's surrounded by reseeding capability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's always the super low end thing where, you know, a middle school or high school science class gets out there with their cell phones once a year. So just so, you know, in 5 or 10 years, when that graduate student shows up, they've got something to work with.
Yeah, and we did plant trees in this site. So and the trees are, they're doing remarkably well for the neglect and the horrible conditions that they're in. But the trees are growing. So we have 1 plot that's been replanted intentionally. And that was done by high school students. So,
Super.
yeah.
In terms of the long-term plots, the best person I can think of at OSU in the forestry department is Carlos Gonzalez. He runs the vegetation management cooperative, and he has plots. They have a lot of ongoing veg plots throughout the state. And so that's a possibility. I feel like funding, of course, you know, if there was some funding for it, that would be very attractive for him.
Yeah. I think, I really, on many levels, not just Gorse, any connections we can make with professors at OSU, extension agents on a lot of our weeds would be fantastic. I don't know, do you visit with him ever? Are you on campus or in meetings?
Well, yeah, we're in the same department, and you know, we do have, you know, we know each other. So I could just make an inquiry with him if he's, I guess I can check to see if he has anything going on with Gorse. And if he's interested in that, and we can just see.
And I think one of the holdbacks on plotting and through OSU is the fact that the Gorse act's completely different near the campus where it's convenient for them to plot versus what it does over here where it just loves what it's doing. And I think even at Gwynnips on Highway 101, it's a little bit different animal than on the bluff, you know. So I think that the plots would have to be something that were regionally specific to the coast to get really accurate information, which means that you need to use one of the outlier OSU areas, you know, they're Lincoln City or whatever, where there's some people there. I know Master Gardener program's active in a lot of those areas. I don't know if that's something that maybe they could, you know, be part of or with forestry or whatever. But yeah, you need to basically have a plot near the coast, in my opinion, for it to be an accurate representation.
Yeah, I agree. They need to be local, the plots. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's, people get around pretty well these days. We've had PSU students down doing master's theses on silvery Phacelia at Bandon Dunes, for example. People are looking for opportunities, and so the real question I had was, is that worth thinking about? That's all.
Yeah, I want to add just another yes, I think it is worth thinking about as well, Al. And Norma, if you do talk to your colleague, I really do believe that there's a tie between the terrace soils and their capacity for phosphorus storage and the tenacity at which gorse grows. So I feel like there could be a joint effort, between their soils program, which is pretty robust, and your vegetation management program up there, looking at those things. Because as people pointed out, certainly our biggest, we know the core infestations have occurred, on these marine terraces because people brought it there. But the spread is also the worst there. The gorse grows fastest there, grows big. And I think there could be a real interest in soil nutrients, exchange in gorse patches. Also just seeing the literature from New Zealand about the nitrate loading, that occurs from the nitrogen fixing. But I have a sneaky suspicion that because the terrace soils have a capacity for infinite phosphorus storage, that there's a real tie there with the bacteria that assist the gorse in fixing the nutrients. So there could be a real soils and veg. You could have both departments contributing to the study, I think, in various ways. So just want to throw that out there.
And this is for Celeste. They have a fantastic plot on state land, the north of the equestrian area at Bullard State Park. That's a monoculture that if Celeste wanted to lose some real estate in gorse, she has a undisturbed, perfect plot scenario right there that may help out and be on public land, which I think would be useful in this, and also could be something that was educational in terms of state park people.
Sherry Laird did a lot of reclaiming of ground at right where you're talking, Liza. And have you seen that, Celeste? The area?
Yeah, we worked on it last year, Carrie.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's just it's a corner of where Liza's talking about. There's lots more, plenty left to work on. So
it's intermingled with a shore pine there too. So it's really, it's exactly what Erin's talking about. They have a compatible relationship, and there is a lot of mycorrhizal activity and pretty much undisturbed, plot from original infestation.
And of all the park managers, well, everybody's on board, but Nick especially has been really involved with the Gorse Action Group and this effort. So I think he'd be really, really into it. So if that is something that folks are interested in, I could get in touch with Nick and see if he'd like to give up some land for that.
I think I'll just back it up here too. So originally through the Oregon Solutions process that the Gorse Action Group went through, we were asked to dream big and no limits to what we were dreaming. And this is big dream stuff we're talking about, of long-term studies. What we felt that the little bite that we could chew off, and very practical and very show and tell, was this demonstration level in Bandon. So that's where we started. But if we did cultivate a relationship with the forestry department at OSU, the sky's the limit with questions that could be addressed or attempted to be addressed with gorse, like you said, Erin, soils. And the question list is very long, and lots of master's degrees could be had for certain. So again,
go back to your lessons here.
Yeah, I'll go back to lessons, but dreaming big. Some of the stuff we're doing now, like what's happening in Bandon with the ordinance and District 3 unfolding, that was dreaming big. We never thought we'd get there either. So that's just a testament to you know, this group and where it's come. And if we're at the next phase with research, fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll continue, Erin. Surprise successes category, and I'm actually in live seeing you all now. My Zoom and headquarters server decided to upload all my emails that haven't been coming in this morning, everything. So, hey, now I got on. Surprise successes. This gets into the tillage, Erin, that you were starting to ask about. And so Liza had seen in one site in particular, maybe multiple, over the years, her work, she had seen a successful site with tillage on the edge of Bandon. And so that was incorporated into one of the plots. And Liza had taken me to this site, and I was impressed with this site outside of this demonstration area. So I guess we're surprised, but it was also confirmed because Liza had seen it before, that tillage is a fantastic tool. So again, step one was getting in with big equipment, getting rid of that big stand of gorse. And so in this bullet point, it says tillage of resprouts proved to be very effective. After 2 years, 97% of other vegetation with only 2% gorse crown resprouts was realized. Where tillage equipment can be used, and that's the caveat, tillage doesn't work in a lot of our areas where we have gorse. But in this instance where this plot was, it was flat. I don't know about the little debris. This end of the plot had little debris. The other ends of the plots didn't. But again, underneath gorse, sometimes we find cars. We find, in this instance, on the other end of our demonstration area, there was huge concrete slabs from prior road projects, I believe, Liza.
Mm-hmm.
But in this plot itself, it was conducive to doing tillage. And step one was, as Liza likes to say, that the plants were ripped out or plucked out with a small excavator. Step two, they were sprayed 6 months later with triclopyr. And then step three was it was tilled in a very thoughtful way. It was a good operator that wasn't just zooming through it. And then step four was that just getting after that spot treatment of those little seedlings that remained and sprouting that remained. But to get 97% other vegetation, that's pretty impressive. Liza, what would you
I have a question about that. I have a question, Liza, about that site. Didn't he also apply lime, or am I wrong?
Did he not what?
Apply lime?
No, in that site, we did not apply lime in that site. We tried lime on another site, and we also tried fertilizer on another site, which are two farmer kind of versions of it, and the fertilizer made the gorse superhuman, and the lime didn't really have much of an impact. But I wasn't able to put on agricultural style with the tractor, enough, it takes a lot of lime to change things in the pH world. So I think it could be more effective. We just didn't have enough of it, financed or mechanical wise to be able to do it. You could get a couple dump truck loads of loose lime would be great, but I think we did some bag stuff. So it wasn't really enough to make the impact that I think it would need. And again, that's a place where science and real studies would be helpful. But the tillage thing, even if it's not plucked, if you grind it thoroughly to the ground and then till, and you have a strong enough tiller, you have the same impact with that. Basically, my theory is that the nitrogen is added by the debris back into the soil, and I think that does help with the nitrogen fixer and also helps the other vegetation get started. But the main thing is to get those resprouts and just keep exhausting the seed bank, I think really helps with that. And I think it's faster than chemical in a lot of ways. But you have to leave the land fallow while you do it, which is most people are in a big hurry, to do something with it. So, and of course you need that kind of terrain that you can manage equipment with.
You guys do, so this was with a disc tillage, like
yeah, this is
behind
a
tractor?
Yeah,
behind a tractor. Okay.
Yeah.
And did he go back and forth a few times?
We went in two directions, and
Okay.
we went slow.
Yeah.
Because we still had a lot of crowns there, and so that's hard on the tiller.
Yeah.
So we went really slow and just pulverized everything and turned it under.
Okay. And is that person who brought that equipment, are they a contractor? Is that person available for hire?
They are me and my tractor and my tiller.
Ah, okay.
although there are, I think there is a possibility. I don't think you could do it on the cultural sites, but I do think that a lot of the equipment that we're using, there's a possibility even with the flail knives to be able to sort of surface till that in open soil like that, where you don't have erosion issues or anything. You really need to get that top 3 inches and get it multiple times. And that's really what seems to do the trick.
Yeah, where I've seen it too, because the walls have done this type of work. Similar results, you know, and just kind of looking through literature too, it does feel like maybe some of the seeds get buried deeper than 4 inches as well with that. And so that's adding to that effect. So
and Joe Marsh has done a lot on the old 40 property. He's reclaimed multiple monoculture fields that way. And done plucking and burning is primarily what he did, only because he doesn't have the mulching heads at his farm, but plucking and burning, and then followed by tillage.
He does now. He's got a
he does now.
Yeah, he does now. Yeah, no, that's good to know. I think this is definitely a method or a tool that I think a lot of folks are interested in and can really help with the herbicide adverse.
I think it'd be very effective in the donut hole. I mean, there's just so much metal in there that old fences and stuff like that is just murder on tillage.
Aaron?
Yeah, Kevin.
We have the ability to both till and plow. We had a section of land that was about 2 acres that was completely covered in gorse, and then went through twice doing the disking of the property and then planting with a rapid farm rye for fields, and it has been very effective.
Awesome.
Hey, this is a question for Katie with NRCS. Is tilling one of the doable options under the NRCS funding? I don't know if Katie's on anymore.
I am. So it's not currently listed as a practice, just because I was always under the impression, like, if you do tillage and you're bringing up old seeds that are buried up to the surface, and that may not be a good thing. So that's why I hadn't included it. But I can make changes for the 2024 sign up. I can't really make changes for this sign up, but if people think it would be beneficial to add conservation tillage, that could be a thing. But the problem though with that is how, right now seeding is included in the list of practices, and seeding technically is supposed to cover site prep. That would include tillage, but it doesn't really show so much in the payment. So when NLCS seeds something, site prep is included with that, but it's not really, it's not shown very well in the payment scenario, but it is implied that you're doing it. So it would be kind of one or the other, tillage or planting, and I think seeding would be better to have as a listed practice than just tilling. That's where I would lean towards.
Yeah.
Erin, this is Marie. I was wondering, is now a good time to ask NRCS about what they're seeing in terms of signups?
We were going to do a little round robin at the end, so
Okay.
let's finish up first.
That's fine.
Let's get Carrie finished up. Let's pause more questions till Carrie's done and then we'll.
Yeah, so the second bullet point under surprise successes was the landscape, the black fabric that was put out and kept in place a year and a half, I believe is what it ended up being down. And less than 1% of gorse crowns and resprouts. And in the plot, there was 74% other vegetation that filled in the plot. So it looked fantastic. Again, you can't string landscape fabric across the whole South Coast. It has its application of, probably more that in town or that yard or that, something that's flat. You can get a good, nice contact to that fabric on the ground. So again, it has its fit in the toolbox for sure, but it's not the solution for, steep hillsides and massive infestations that we have in some areas. But it definitely is a tool in the toolbox that we want to let people know about.
So Kari, would you say up to 10 acres? It would be kind of the maximum for that?
That would be
flat?
excessive. That would be excessive. I'm thinking more your backyard level. What do you think would be the maximum, Liza, with,
Well, I think a place where it would work really well is, for example, that field on Seabird, where behind the real estate place where it's been mowed flat for decades and it's become a horizontal plant. That kind of application in lawn, or in flat area like that, that's both a great application for tillage as well as a great application for, one of the things I was thinking is on the edges, to be able to suppress and to put down a barrier, because I think a lot of what happens there is that the seed basically, rots underneath there or whatever goes on. I don't know. It was magical. We took it off. It was just crazy. The plot went, just animal regrowth with that. And the fabric was more easy to control. You have to weight it for the wind around here. But the clear plastic, in a way, was a disaster, even though it worked really well, because it gets airborne, but it also breaks down in the sunlight. And although it grew great stuff underneath it, and we had really good grass return and everything underneath there, it became the sort of a toxic nightmare in terms of taking it away, because it just shredded into all these bits and pieces, and the wind had eaten it up and the sun had eaten it up. So I think that the black fabric could be reusable, and you could do something in stages where you took the same piece of broadcloth that's 12 feet wide and moved through a site where you pulled it off and then tilled and reapplied it, those kinds of things. So if somebody was really anti-chemical or they were close to a creek or some kind of water body, this might be a good 12-foot buffer zone type of an application. I think would work really well.
So you're really thinking a total size of
half
cloth,
acre. Yeah.
half acre.
Maybe.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. All right. But it could be a linear half acre.
Right. Yeah. I think it'd make a great buffer scenario, and especially where you have an adjacent neighbor who's anti-herbicide or, that kind of a scenario. And it might even work in a steep slope application if you can pin it down in such a way that it doesn't become a liability peeling off the hill. It would be a great way on a steeper slope if you can suppress it, grind it, and then suppress it underneath there. You'd also be creating your own erosion control, but it would be a way to not get herbicides close to water, for example.
What do you think about cranberry bogs, the edges of cranberry bogs, Liza?
Yeah, I think it would work really well around ponds at cranberry bogs, for example. They're constantly fighting that because it comes in, those seed comes in on the ditches, comes into the. So I think it'd be a great place to line their bog edges with fabric.
And I can speak on steep slopes with landscaping fabric. Anders Hansen Coos Watershed. We had a project site, even though it wasn't gorse, it was ivy, English ivy on a hillside. We're able to use black landscaping fabric there, and the hillside was remarkably steep, and it held up for a year and a half, and then the ivy was gone. So it was a linear site, not too big, perfect application. So I'd say steep slopes too, as long as they're small enough, would be a good use of this method.
Yeah, and I would just throw in a caveat there. It's a tool in the toolbox that has its place, but just like any tool, I've seen it over applied on forest landscape level, total failure. Like their whole forest was covered. It was an eyesore, number one, and it just wasn't effective on the weeds they were using it on. You had to keep, once you brought the fabric up in other weed situations in those forests with shade and other aspects, it didn't work. But again, every tool has its place. It's just a matter of finding the right site for it. It's not the find one tool and use it everywhere. So continuing on with failures section, we already knew this, but we wanted to demonstrate it. The one and done strategy, where we see this all the time, especially in Bandon, the out of town absentee landowner, they hire a contractor to come and mow it, and then they're done. Well, they get in this cycle and they have to do it every year, because what happens is you're just creating horizontal gorse, like Liza mentioned. But anyways, so we did have a plot in there of just went in there once with the big equipment and then walked away from it. We knew what was going to happen, but we have some data now. After 2 years, 70% of the plot was overtaken by gorse regrowth from the crowns of the gorse. The next failure I mentioned already, that crossbow roundup. I mentioned, it looked really good. It was actually kind of scary. It was just like the life was sucked out of that plot. It was literally gray color. It was just the, total crossbow. And we had so much overuse of crossbow. That's why we wanted to put it in the trial. People just use it everywhere. And again, it looks great up front, but then the longer the study went on, it was clear it was just going to be bare ground, and then it just got reinvaded. So again, it looks great first, but not necessarily good for long-term gorse management. The next third bullet point under failures was that fertilizing plot that Liza mentioned. Again, it just grew gorse that was meaner and angrier. So 70% gorse regrowth in that plot. Really, it just was horrific. It
gorse might have been 110.
We did find some openings in there with some other vegetation, but yeah, so that we threw that in there. The fourth bullet point, when attempting to solarize, that's that clear plastic that Liza was just talking about. It was disaster. The plastic just didn't hold up a few months, and it was shredding, and it just wasn't, we couldn't get it to hold in place long enough to have the effect that we wanted. Fifth bullet point, a lot of folks sometimes go down to the hardware store and they get those pre-mixed little squirt and tough brush killer products that are just really, really weak triclopyr active ingredient, just really low percentages. And we wanted to include that in there to show that it's just that triclopyr strength, and those over-the-counter hardware store things just aren't enough to kill gorse. So that's what that plot demonstrated. And lastly, composting. One of the plots, or a part of one of the plots, had this big pile of that plucked gorse that was put into a pile for composting. We also had burning, an attempt at burning. Liza, you could talk about those, but there's a place for them, but that composted huge compost pile, it just grows gorse out of it as it's decomposed. I know you could talk about it, Liza.
Well, I'll just say the burning thing turned into quite a dramatic event, and is really similar to what we have as a historic storytelling about gorse, and that is that it reignited itself, even though it was a controlled burn. And Coos Forest, and Robert's on here, he could tell you Coos Forest was on it. We did it right before, I think, Memorial Day weekend, so there was plenty of moisture, humidity, the whole 9 yards. It reignited itself while everybody was off having Memorial Day weekend, and guess who got to go down there with I went down to the concrete plant, filled the concrete truck up full of water, and went out there and had to post up on it for the weekend because it kept reigniting. So this is exactly where it gets away. The wind came up, it was going on to the right of way at ODOT and was creating a smoke issue on the highway. So there's lots of things that we learned from the burning I'd heard about it from all the old farmers and everything, where it got away from them. And Lanny Boston had filled me in on, it's fun to burn it because it goes so great. Well, it didn't. It smoldered for weeks after that. And then the composting thing, it's very unsatisfying to compost. There's too much air in it, and the woody and the tops don't break down evenly at the same time. And you'd have to constantly be turning it. And every time you're turning it, you're disturbing the seed bank. And so you're ending up with sort of a mound of potentially fertile gorse, high graded starter pack basically in your compost pile, and it doesn't break down very fast. It's surprising, it's still there. And so it's ugly, you know, and nobody really wants to look at that. It's not very satisfying in terms of that. And that's where we took, you know, tall pieces, plucked them out and tried to pile them, bunch them up. They don't bunch very well when they're green. And then as they break down, they leave a lot of air in there, which is good for composting in general. But because of the combination of woody as well as the tops broke down really quickly, and you ended up with a bunch of stems that couldn't compost because they didn't have enough cover on them and they didn't have enough green with them. So I think that was you know, just telling people don't just pile it, because it'll just become new mounds of gorse that are vertical, not horizontal. Basically. So we learned from our piling experience that it's not one and done with the piling and plucking. We realized that mastication is by far efficient in terms of dealing with the debris and making the debris into a usable product, both as erosion control and as a return of nitrogen, plus suppression to the weed bank. So mastication is by far and away a much, much better method of handling that debris from gorse removal than anything else, in my opinion.
Liza,
Speaking of debris and burning, this that experiment with biochar, that's just not scale.
Yeah, it's pretty labor intensive to get it all to the feeder and to go through that process. And I know that Norma's been working on a biochar project, and Aaron also trying to get something down at the dump down in Curry County, so that they can deal with it, because they're moving gorse off site when they and then now there's DEQ has shut down a lot of the burning at the dumps themselves. So there is a potential use for it, but somebody already has to have it in their pickup truck and go to the dump before that would be really effective. And I don't think you can get the clearances from DEQ to move it around like the portable units, because they really seem super fussy from what you guys dealt with at the dunes, super fussy about wind conditions and when you can run it and who's impacted by it and the output of the smoke and all that. And I can't see in forestry or downtown Bandon anybody really meeting that criteria, you know, on the day that they happen to be there to do the work, you know. So I think that has its limiters.
Right. The main thing with the biochar unit, I think it was the Burn Boss unit that was, I can't remember the exact name that was demoed. It's considered a point source pollution because it's a mechanical piece of equipment. And I believe the permit cost for the annual, one-time permit cost at least is $25,000. And then there's annual fees associated with that. So I feel that the DEQ folks need to update their rules to address biochar better, because I think it is a net gain to treat woody materials like that. But there's also other tools. There's the flame cap kilns, which are simple. They're just like a large campfire ring that you have to water with also, but you can quench it and create biochar. And South Slough has one of those, and they're planning a workshop, hopefully in March. So folks, I'll try to get that ad out to folks when that happens.
Yeah, I was going to add about the gorse. What we saw too was it was labor intensive to get it in the burn boss, and it had to be like sized correctly. So you almost had to like trim the gorse to get it in the equipment itself. So it just was really labor intensive, which was okay for us in a demo, but in practice, I think in general practice for folks, you have owner operators, to have like 3 staffers out there manning their different pieces for the number of hours it takes. It just really wasn't feasible, plus the cost of the equipment. So I think, and then like Norma said, the permitting itself also is just a huge barrier with the state agencies.
Yes, there's only one contractor that in Oregon that I know of. He was going to come down to Port Orford and never heard back from Sarah Navarro about, how all that went, or if it even went. I don't know.
It didn't go. It didn't.
Go. That's what I figured. But yeah, there is one contractor who does have that annual permit from DEQ. So he would be the one, because that's been the conversation at the dump as well, is that, when they burn, when they are allowed to burn, and when they do burn, they are just getting a short-term permit that allows them to burn for 7 days. I believe they have to take a 30-day break before they're allowed to burn again, which is incredibly inefficient and just not useful down here. So yeah, there's a few hurdles there. And I know that the Forest Service group that was, brought the demo down, definitely we're having conversations with DEQ. But a lot of it has to do with the state air quality, I can't remember what the rule's called, but was a result of finding lead from the glass and manufacturing in Portland, and it's had a big impact on all these other types of because they're considered an incinerator, the air curtain burners currently. That's what they get categorized as. So yeah, more big dreams, I guess.
So to finish up with this, the next steps would be to get another round of comments. I've gotten some initial feedback from Liza and Sherry Lair. And then the hope would be to make this look shiny and pretty, like Samara Group has helped us with some of the previous Gorse Action Group handouts. And of course, putting it up on the website is a step. And so we'd have a handout for in-person outreach and events, and then we'd have the online presence at the website. And then the last step, which I don't know if we'll get to, Cassie Bosky with OSU Extension has expressed some interest in helping get this published. Obviously not in a peer-reviewed journal because it didn't have those replicates, but in something through OSU that would reach a wider audience in terms of looking at it as a demonstration trial type of study. And so I'm not sure if that'll happen. Frank and I started making grabs, some nice charts and graphs with some of the data. So that's where that would come into play, is the charts and graphs for displaying the different plots and what we found. So yeah, so thank you. I mean, it's been a long time coming to get these results out, but we sure learned a lot.
Well, and one of the things I would say is in my conversation with ODA on this pesticide thing, the guys at pesticide licensing knew nothing about Gorse, and I mean, he didn't know what chemical worked on it or anything. So you have to understand that even within the scientific community and within the Department of Agriculture, that we are really a specialized little bubble in terms of that. And it is useful to have. I had to reconstruct an entire Gorse learning curve for the ODA pesticide guy to understand the weed itself and the multiple treatments over many years, which is why we needed to get some kind of category waiver, because we're going to be doing this for 20 years in the city of Bandon. And I think that having something like what Carrie's talking about that has a little bit of a stamp of we tried it and this is what works would be really useful, because we could send it to other agencies who, when we bring our Gorse stuff to them, they are in the dark every time. And I ran into this for 40 years before we met Carrie and GAG got going and all of that kind of stuff, where we got somebody who got up to speed on what works and what doesn't work. And in coastal environments, it's not a valley thing, and it's not something that people be familiar with unless they were from the Southwest region of Oregon. So I think that's really useful to get something out there.
Yes. That was excellent. Thank you, Carrie, for sharing. We will wait for those kinds of things. So no worries. Okay, so we got about 20 minutes left. Liza, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to talk about the winter workshop.
Okay.
So go ahead and just give everybody your highlights.
Okay. Well, we actually had to turn people away this year, so the word's out. I'm not sure if it's the barbecue lunch or whether it's the content of the 8-hour lecture, but we've gone from 15 hours down to 8 hours, and now I think I have all my guys kind of catching up their credits in an 8-hour thing. And we had some new excavators that came in, new pesticide people, And I focused a lot on getting new apprentices and trainees. And we talked a lot about the pros and cons of training new people and the resistance to learning and all those kinds of things, with the idea of expanding that workforce so we have more applicators in the area. So that's kind of what my punch was this year. Next year, I'm going to focus on best management practices, because we're going to be so deep into District 3, and we have so much outlying area and big projects like Elk River and places like that, that I'm really hoping that the mechanical people will get, a better, support in terms of education of what pros and cons they can do. And the word's out, though. I've been able to garner people from forestry and all over the place. I'd love to see some fire guys in there, just so they're understanding that. Also, I wanted to get maybe some people from NRCS and some things like that, because I'm trying to get people to understand that erosion control, especially in the bluff side areas, is a built-in part of your bid and needs to be loaded up front. What are you going to put there when you get done? So I'm trying to introduce restoration, rehabilitation, as well as, best management practices up front, so that people are actually seeing gorse removal and replacement as a whole picture, and not just getting surprised later on by the cost of, multiple follow-up sprays and not reseeding slopes and things like that. So I'm trying to expand that into, like the whole continuum of gorse restoration. And that's what I'm going to focus on next year. But I'd like to get some fire guys in there. I'd like to get some guys from the more road crew guys in there. So we're working together with these other agencies. A lot of these guys that I'm working with now are independent contractors, but I'd like to see some more state guys and some, county guys get in there, so that we're kind of working together and regionally at the same time, and saving each other money and not messing up each other's, best management practices and so forth. So next level of coordination, I guess, is where I'm at with the next round of this. And they get credits and they get a great lunch. We're having tri-tips next year. Just saying. Tri-tip steaks on the barbecue. So bring your best. It was a huge hit. Yeah.
I wanted to ask Liza, do you have any thoughts? Because, when you talk about going to these landowners, probably on larger tracts, but for sure, in the city, there's going to be ongoing management, and we sort of know that, and that's communicated going in. But I'm just wondering, on these larger tracts, is there any other thoughts on, what could help that long-term management rather than just mowing, spraying gorse? Like, I'm talking about some development of some sort, some farming or ag of some sort. Like, is there, is that sort of germinating at all, or is that still a little ways away?
Well, just one thing that I just in our conversation with Celeste, that they, they're struggling to get natives back out on their slopes and so forth. And I am trying to come up with maybe a partnership with state parks, and maybe come to get a seed mixture that's specific to our coastal area, that includes the natives that they would like to see restored, and hand that out as part of the city of Bandon's efforts to people, so that they'd have a per quarter acre or per acre or whatever. And we get some of these species diversity and pollinators and things like that back out, and that they understand that you could actually be putting land back in restoration. And that's kind of where I'm focusing. I got to get my workforce thinking that way. I mean, they just want to get the contract to kill it, mow it. And then they don't want to be the pesticide guy, so they don't want to be the herbicide guy. So I'm trying to get them to do the 1-2 punch and be the herbicide guy too, if I can. And I want them also to specialize in the vertical slope stuff versus the flat land stuff. I mean, there's a lot of flat landers, but there's not a lot of vertical guys. So that's a whole thing. And they need a lot of erosion training there. So it's going to be really site specific. But my first thing is to try and get some massive amount of seed bank captured before we can't get it, and that we can provide it. And it could be an incentive. If you make contact with Jason, he hands you, oh, you have an acre of gorse, here's an acre's worth of seed that you can put down, after this and this is done. And it has to be viable seed. So we have to be able to buy it at, in incremental amounts. And also nursery stock. It's really hard to find native nursery stock. And I'm hoping Sherry and some of the other, the Coos Watershed and the people like that have enough, plant material
Let's
to
jump
help keep
in.
up with that. Yeah.
Liza, I'll just jump in. I've been,
Okay.
well, the plant community that you're talking about that would be most appropriate for those vertical slopes would be a coastal prairie community. And I've been working on that type of habitat for over a decade, mainly because of the Oregon silver spot butterfly. And there's a lot of partners on the South Coast. Probably the most active partner is the Understory Initiative, that have been working to try to develop plant materials through the Coastal Native Seed Partnership and just individual grow outs. And the work has been very, very slow, and it's stalled, and we do not have access to large amounts of coastal prairie seed. There are some partners that have developed enough to restore the habitats that they're working on for the silver spot butterfly, but to have enough to give to, you know, landowners, that we're really far away from being in that situation. So, and Sherry has a very small production operation. She's growing container plants, so she's not doing seed. Haven't been up to date. I don't know, maybe the Coos watershed folks could talk about what's happening at the Matson nursery and how that's going. The Understory Initiative has some seed in production, but again, you know, it takes years to get a field. You know, first you start it, and then 3 years later, you might have some seed. And what's been happening is that after all of that work, the seed is very expensive. It's, you know, we're buying it because we can get grant funding to do that kind of work because it's for an enlisted species, but a landowner paying 300 pounds for, $300 for a pound of seed for one species, it's not realistic. So we're pretty far away from that. And it's been a goal of mine for a long time, but not giving up, just saying that.
Well, I sent Celeste some mixes that are commercially available now, and from a couple of seed sources here in Oregon, that maybe, you know, maybe we're compromising some of our goals, but we could have something that is getting out there that maybe has some clover in it, or maybe has some other things in there that will work in the short term. It may not all be sand fescue or, you know, a desired species, but it would be something.
I should clarify too, what I'm talking about are plant materials that are sourced from the coastal region. So you can go into the Willamette Valley and buy sand fescue and red fescue or other species that could easily grow on these places, but they aren't genetically sourced from our coastal region.
Even then, they're still pretty expensive to get into those. Like I buy native red fescue. It's expensive. I got a quote for 100 pounds of sand fescue for $6,000.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, it is. But also, you know, Goldie's not here, but they have a grow out contract that she's really started also trying to get to some of the bigger commercial growers to get, and we collected Poa last year and some other forbs, and so we've, you know, it, like Celeste said, it's going to take a minute, but
yeah,
I'll keep trying that way.
Well, and I think if we aggregated our need together, I think that's one of the places where GAG could say, we as a group, the state parks and BLM and, you know, U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the city of Bandon as an incentive program funded by WRCA in the short term or whatever, you know, we can guarantee you that we're going to buy 500 to 1,000 pounds or 2,000 pounds or whatever. Then it makes it worth it for them to go after it, because it's not something that they're going to sell acres and acres of in the valley, which is where their primary, you know, their primary area is.
I think that's where it's really valuable to have our bigger partners, you know, the federal partners and parks, create these contracts with these growers, because for the rest of us that are grant funded, that's a really difficult thing to project out 3 years and to you know, get that contract grow going. So there's some hurdles there, but I think, yeah, the more that our agency folks can broker those agreements on our behalf is great, and we can certainly help supply the native seed genetics to help fill that out. So
yeah, one of the things that we've run into with the Coastal Native Seed Partnership is that say a federal agency or a state agency does a grow out field, the ideal thing would be that Oregon State Parks has, you know, some extra funding at the end of the biennium they contract with a grower to grow out these fields with the understanding that the parks will get, so many pounds of seed, and then anything that's left over is open to any other partner to purchase. But unfortunately, that hasn't really been happening because the harvests have been really small, and like the Fish and Wildlife Service and the Forest Service have pounds and pounds of native seed in storage, but they either want us to trade seed one for one for them, seed that they're interested in to get that seed. Or, I mean, that's really the only option. And we can't purchase it. There's no like nexus for paying the Forest Service to give us some of the seed that they have in storage. So it just gets tricky. And that's why the Coastal Native Seed Partnership, that was the whole idea of that, was to leverage all of our needs together and folks all chip in and say, okay, yeah, let's get some large growers in the valley who are set up to do this kind of work. There's a ton of seed producers in the valley. Hand them some coastal seed and get some fields going for some key species that we know that we are all using in their different habitats. But we just haven't been able to get it going.
Anders Hansen, Coos Watershed, just want to update you guys on our projects in terms of nursery work. We are establishing native seed plots. Some of these are from locally sourced seed. We're working to establish red fescue, Poa macrantha in natural area, as well as I believe cow clover. We're working on that. Dune adapted species as well, Nootka reedgrass and others. So we are trying to fulfill this need. This isn't going to be an amount where we can supply like hundreds of pounds of seed, but at least we're going to have, some sort of seed bank. As for the cost, I can't speak on what the cost is going to be projected to be, but it's probably going to be, quite a bit more expensive than what you'd get from the Willamette Valley in terms of more generic seed. In addition to this, if landowners want some native shrubs or trees, we have almost 24 species. Many of these are propagated from local sources. So if you have a landowner in Bandon that if you want to somehow sweeten the deal and add some native shrubs in the mix or something like that for replanting, that's a great option. Our weeds program is pursuing it ourselves with some people that might be adverse to spraying or something. You can go into their riparian area and maybe do some the addition of twinberry or red flowering currant. These beautiful flowering plants that are also good for the ecosystem. If you have questions about that, Ed Cope is our program manager for our nursery program. He'd be more than happy to fill you in. In terms of when these seed plots are going to go online, they're 3 years out, if not more, before they reach peak production. These are perennial plants and they take a while to establish. So that's the update from us on that.
Perfect. Thanks, Anders. We really appreciate you guys' efforts. So I'm going to end the seed talk, even though I think we could talk a long time about this, and it is a big deal. Definitely wheels are moving. They move slow, but look where we're at. So in another couple of years, we'll all be like, I have too much grass seed. I don't know what to do with it. Let's hope for that, right? So since we have a few more minutes left, and I really want to respect everybody's time, we did plan around robin. Not everybody has to go. I think we'll just, anyone who has really something burning, I would like to start with Katie and get an update from the NRCS CIS program. And then I also want to acknowledge that Robin Harkins is here from the Coquille tribe. Robin came in here sometime, maybe when Liza was talking. So, and I'll start off around Robin. I just want to, and then we'll go to Katie. I just want to say, because I skipped my website updates. I just want to let you guys know that now that Jason's on, we are going to get on and update the City of Bandon page on the GAG website. We're going to plan on going through that and getting his information up there. So that'll get refreshed really soon, which is really great. So yeah, I'm going to give it over to Katie.
Hi everybody. We got full applications this go around, although one, I'm having a hard time getting some final paperwork from him. So I don't think he'll be able to meet the deadline of this Friday to get that paperwork to me. But I had full originally, I had more, but several people backed out after doing site visits and talking with them and getting a plan set up. They just seemed like they weren't quite ready to handle the commitment of that. Of those full contracts, it was total of $172,000 of funds that we were asking for. So the deadline is this Friday to get those cost estimations and ranking into the computer system on my end, which I've already met that. It's already in the system. And then once they're in there, then we'll see who gets funded. That's but it's looking pretty positive that they'll all get funded. And then NLCS it might be asking to do a second sign up, but I so far haven't gotten any signups for the second sign up. And that is where I'm at. Any questions?
Katie, I was going to include, I've pretty much finished the design of the Weed of the Month for February through the South Coast Cooperative Weed Management Area, and is going to feature Gorse. There's a portion in that Weed of the Month that talks about your NRCS program. Would that be appropriate with the second sign up coming up or?
Yeah, I don't have the deadline, but yeah, we can, we'll continuously taking applications. So yes, please.
Okay, perfect.
Katie, do you want to real quick plug your local work group meeting coming up?
Yes. Thank you, Aaron. Yeah, so my local work group meeting is going to be February 15th at the Bandon Library from 4 to 6. That's kind of where everybody kind of talks about the local needs of the two counties for NLCS. And so, yeah, last year we focused on goals to try to get this goal CIS kicked off, and because of the local meeting, we have the goal CIS, and you know, you'll continue support with the GAG. And then this year we're looking at maybe doing a cranberry irrigation system and possibly some other things. So if you're interested, please attend.
You should get in touch with the Cranberry Growers Association and let them know about that.
I already did. I talked to Bob and
Okay.
Cassie. Cassie sent it around to the growers for me. But thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Katie. Robin, would you like to, you have anything you want to add to the group today? Robin, are you still there? Okay, if she perks up, we'll go back to her. Anyone else have anything they want to add today? Marie, go ahead. Your first hand up.
I saw Commissioner Sweet, so why don't you go first?
Okay.
Well, thank you, Marie. Yeah, a couple of questions. One, could someone send me a copy of the lessons learned presentation? That was really good. I'd like to distribute it to our roads department, our planning department, and our forestry department, and keep it for my own personal use. So second, we were very pleased to help clean up some gorse along the beach just south of the South Jetty. We were very surprised to find out that the county owned that. There's a little narrow strip of land running, and it also that's been kind of taken care of, and we're following up on making sure that gross course doesn't come back. But the ownership map also shows that we own the South Jetty. And so if anyone's interested in the South Jetty on the cheap, let me know. We'll be happy to sell it to you. Throw in the Brooklyn Bridge as well. But what I really want to talk about, it's been some time, and I apologize for not being more proactive about it, but we were told that we own also a very narrow strip of land along the Bandon beach, kind of running as best as I recall from the old Queen Anne site, if anyone knows where that is, down south, just underneath Sunset Motel. I don't know how we got that. I mean, it's amazing, and it can't be very wide, and it's right at the foot. It really is. The lower part is right on the beach, and it goes up the hill just a little ways. And I don't know how to get to it. I don't know, how to contact all the people that would own the bluff up above us, and so it's kind of a problem. So if someone would reach out to me from the city, we want to get on it. I just don't know quite how to go about it. So if someone would contact me.
I think Jason wants to get a hold of you because it's a gray area. We've got some land too that we can't figure out who owns it. It shows that State Parks was involved at some point, but then they don't have it on their roster. So we've got some gray areas. We need to talk to your assessor and figure out who. There's some that are not even. We can't figure out who owns them. Basically,
nor can we.
Yeah.
and they, of course, I imagine they could trail it back, but no one seems to have the time to do all the title researches going back until who knows when to do that. So yeah, 541-217-8135. Feel free to call me.
Jason, you got that?
Repeat that number again.
541-217-8135.
Yeah, John, just so you know, I'm also on the Noxious Weed Advisory Board, and I'm about to be talking to Jill on that in a couple of hours. So
okay,
this
good.
is something that's been on my radar.
Okay. And just one more thing to all of you. Thank you for this remarkable effort that you've put into controlling gorse. I thought it would never happen. And it is happening. Thank you.
We're trying to get it done in your lifetime, John.
Well, you better hurry. Get going.
That was our promise.
That's all I have.
Great, thanks, John. Marie, did you have something else to add?
I just wanted to piggyback on what Commissioner Sweet just said. I'm so encouraged, and I hate to say delighted, but I am, to hear all of the energy and enthusiasm and actual work going on around Gorse. So we've been really pleased to support it, and we want to continue to do that because there's just great energy, momentum, and effort, and so and progress. And so we want to keep doing that. In terms of a project, and I see Al's name still on the list, but he may be just listening in at this point. We, at the request of the city of Bandon last year, maybe a year and a half ago now, purchased a piece of property that was in Coos County that has subsequently been annexed into the city of Bandon. It's 17 acres off of 20th Street, which is just south of Bandon, the main thoroughfare in Bandon. Anyways, the thought was that we would do some sort of housing project in combination with the city that would be for the broader benefit of the citizenry of Bandon. And what we're running into right now is a lot of gorse with wet feet. And so that's creating some, as you all know here on this phone, potential agency challenges. So anyways, I just want to put it on the radar. As we all know, gorse is a big fire hazard. This is now in the city limits. Functioning wetland is a big question mark. And I'm really, we're really interested as well in thinking about management tools that may look different than additional habitat creation. So, what does that mean? Well, maybe agriculture, maybe housing, other opportunities for folks to turn what is completely unproductive land into something that has a benefit to the area. So anyways, I'll pause there. Al, if you want to add anything.
Thanks, Marie. That's a good coverage. We can get you some graphics on what it looks like, or you can take a look at this terrific video that was done in connection with the South Coast Housing Conference this week. And Marie and Dan Chandler will explain it with some good drone footage. So that might be worth getting. what I'd love to see is somehow if we could come up with a mitigation bank of some kind inside the urban growth boundary, so it's not affecting farmland, that would allow us to build this property, because it is currently got existing small, very small platted lots that would actually take 172 small prefabs right now without anything further if we didn't have the wetland and gorse challenges. And that would solve a fire hazard problem. It would solve a home ownership problem, and it would hopefully help us create a wetland mitigation bank and be a contributor to that someplace else in town. The property is basically there free if we can get the kinds of things done that need to be done to put it into the housing land trust or a limited equity cooperative or something like that, where it stays sustainable, it offers home ownership, it gets some of our workers to stay, it keeps the gorse down, and hopefully doesn't have serious wetland impacts. And I'll just simply tell you the wetland values that our consultants come up with are extremely low. It's isolated, it's gorse infested, it doesn't connect with anything that where it has a flood function. So we'd like to be able to build the entire property out. And so if anybody has any bright ideas about how to do that, we would love to hear from you.
How many acres are wetland in the 20-acre parcel?
It's 17 acres, and of the 17 acres, between 10 and 12 acres are wetlands.
They're delineated
And they're
now.
and they're a bit close to delineated, and they are scattered in such a way that they don't do anything for each other, and they sure screw up any development plans.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank
Okay,
you.
we're gonna have to think about that.
Uh-huh.
Okay, let's see, Courtney, she sent a plug in. Courtney, do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
keep having mic issues. Yeah, so I'm co-hosting an invasive species workshop with the Washington Invasive Species Council. It's actually funded through USDA APHIS plant protection and quarantine. And so it's really just, all taxa, pests, that sort of thing. Right now we have an advisory team formed. I actually reached out to a few of you to see if anyone would be able to join, but yeah, the team's really just helping develop the content. So we have a survey to rank the topics from, most important to least important. Gorse is one of the topics on that survey. So maybe I can share that with just one or two representatives from the group. So maybe Aaron and whoever else you think. And we're hoping to get some feedback by this Friday. And yeah, it would be really, if gorse is one of the topics that, rise to the top, which I'm sure it will be, it would be great to have, an update from one of you and just talk about gorse identification management, the GAG group and all that. So, and it'll be in person in Astoria, really great networking event. And yeah, so and the venue's beautiful. It's going to be catered as well.
What's the date?
April 6th, and it's a really tight turnaround because the funding sunsets the agreement on mid-April. So they were just really chomping at the bit waiting for me to start. So yeah, we're a little behind, but it's going to be good.
Awesome.
I'd be happy to do that, Aaron, but I'll be in Tennessee.
So now you volunteered, Liza?
I volunteer, but I'll be in Tennessee.
Okay.
I can do it via Zoom, I guess.
Yeah. I think we can think about, if Gorse does rise up, we can think about getting somebody there. So
cool. I'll keep you looped in, Aaron.
Thank you, Courtney.
Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate you coming today. Anybody else for the good of the order? We are 9 minutes over, but this has been really awesome.
Aaron, I was just going to toss in there that since we last met, I did update the contractors list, that now that you have Jason, the new contractors list updated can go on the website with Jason officially coming aboard paid. Yeah, okay.
Terry's backdrop.
I put it up there right after we finished it. So it's there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I did change my backdrop. That's the fertilized gorse plot behind me. And then also,
10%.
and I also worked on just a little guidance document. I'm fine tuning it with Liza and a few others in terms of the history of the group and the structure of the group. So I will get that final one to you, Aaron and Alexa. Again, it's that document that should, the next person come along, or even the current Alexa, would be helpful for you and others that come after you that would know what this group is about, its history, and how it functions.
Perfect. Thanks, Carrie. Yeah, and I can get with Carrie. I can get with you and Liza to talk about prettying up your document. So we will touch base about that. All righty. Anybody else? All righty. Again, awesome stuff here, you guys. I really appreciate it. We do need to schedule another meeting. I forgot about that part till just a second. And I'm looking at maybe May. So I'll send a doodle poll to our steering committee folks and we'll pick a date and we'll go from there if that works for everybody. Sorry that we didn't get to it, but we should let everybody go. Okay.
Thank you, Aaron and Alexa.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks
Thank you.